Yeah.
So
Careful.
careful, yeah.
Careful. She might be hovering. Um, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. So I'm gonna get into this. I'll tell you. I'll start this off. Um, Now I'm going to come to Kenny, then to you, Anthony, position by position as we do this. So, goalkeeper. Well, I spent a lot of time thinking about this one, and I eventually narrowed it down to two goalkeepers. I thought Pat Jennings, brilliant goalkeeper. I thought about John Lukic because of his season in '89. But at the end of the day, I had to go with David Seaman because of the fact that what he achieved as an international goalkeeper for England and the trophies he won at Arsenal. Because I very, very nearly went with Jens Lehmann. And the reason I was going to go with Jens Lehmann was because he was an invincible and he dug Arsenal out of a lot of games that season that we could have lost. So
Yeah.
it was a tricky one for me. But I had to go with David Seaman. So David Seaman for me is my number one all-time 11 goalkeeper. Kenny?
It's very interesting, like you mentioned Jens name, but I'm going to get to him in a minute. But all the time, goalkeepers I remember, I started with first goalkeeper I remember is Jimmy Rimmer, and then obviously Pat Jennings joined for Tottenham, and I thought that was a shot. And then obviously you've got players. I'm not going to mention George Wood for obvious reasons. I'm not mentioning him, and obviously he had Johnny Lukic, part of my teenage years. Always hold him in high esteem, and obviously David Seaman. But it's very interesting you mentioned Jens Lehmann because, you talk about how he dug us out of a lot of holes. Let's not forget that when we got to the Champions League final, if you take away what happened in the final, and I still hate that referee,
Yeah.
it was Jens Lehmann just as much as Thierry Henry who got us to that final. You only have to think about a penalty save from Riquelme in that semi-final in Villarreal, which has got us as final, but his leadership as well. So it's very, very close. Whilst David Seaman's a very easygoing man, but then again, you look at David Seaman, and you obviously I didn't like Seaman when he first came because I was a massive John Lukic fan. But I started back David Seaman. There was a game against Leeds where it was the FA Cup. We went into the semi-final that season, 91, where he made some saves that just I thought were impossible to make. One from Lee Chapman from point blank range, which put over the bar where Lee Chapman's looked score, and there was a shot from Gary McAllister that took about two cut deflections, and it went to him like a rocket, and he put over the bar. So that's my earliest memories of David Seaman. Obviously, the save at Old Trafford at Sheffield United. So it's close between Lehmann and Seaman for me, and obviously Johnny Lukic as well. It's very, very close, but I'll have to concur and go, David Seaman.
Yeah. Just. Yeah, I agree. I do agree. It is just minute. It's minute. I still say to this day, and I'll always say it, I don't care what anybody says, we were cheated in that Champions League final. I'd still say it to this day, and maybe one day in history the truth will come out. Anthony, goalkeeper, your choice, your goalkeeper.
You know what, Jez, is an absolute full house on this one. David Seaman. I mean, we've had, over the years, if you notice, we've had good goalkeepers playing at this club. Some of them that I remember watching, even some of them that a little bit just before my time. I mean, obviously the likes of starting off with, let's say, Bob Wilson. Then, as you know, there's Pat Jennings, there's John Lukic, and then there's David Seaman and Jens Lehmann. I feel they were the best look. But yeah, I had to go with David Seaman. It's like what Kenny said. It was that save he did against Sheffield United, but he literally threw itself, from the other side of the goal mouth, and it hit his hand. It went over the bar. I think that's the save what Kenny was talking about. And I just think that when we had Seaman in goal, he was called Mr. Safe Hands, wasn't he? You know, and the only thing that I didn't admire of him was the one goal he let in against Naeem from the halfway line when we was in the final.
Yeah.
Blimey, I tell you what, as an Arsenal fan, you most probably had it and so did Kenny, but I had the piss whips out of me through that. It was like it was an absolute nightmare just on that day. He just jumped way up too early, you know, just to grab because the ball hit his hand and fell in the back of the net. So, but yeah, he's got my he's the best goalkeeper, and it's like what we said, the service that he's done for the club as well, the trophies he's won for Arsenal, you know, is what well, he's the keeper that's won the most trophies. So yeah, that's why he's my number one.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, that's interesting. All three of us agree. David Seaman. Okay. Excuse me. Let's go to the right back position. Now, this for me. Oh, I mean, I was quite surprised, Anthony, when you last night we were chatting, and you said, "I've done my 11, Jez. I've done it," and I was impressed. I was this player, that player. Whew, tricky one. But eventually I've settled on a player I actually loved watching play. Absolutely iconic player in my book. This is my view. Lee Dixon. Lee Dixon. I thought he was class, man. Excuse me. Still got this poxy awful cold. But I could have put in there probably 5 players, to be honest, 5 players. But I went with Lee Dixon, and I think that's a good shout. Kenny?
Yeah, so that's the standard answer. It's a good shout as well. But you know, over the years we've been strong at right back. You know, my first right back obviously is Pat Rice, captain, fantastic. The cat, you know, when you talk about Arsenal captains, you know, obviously Tony Adams is always going to be up there for a lot of us. But then again, Pat Rice, let's not forget Pat Rice, double winner in 1971, captain, you know, in the late 70s and the 80s when, you know, when we went in a bit of a decline. Great like back. And let's not forget Viv Anderson. You know, the first season when George Graham won that Littlewoods Cup, Viv Anderson as well, from for about 3 years when he signed him for Nottingham Forest. Obviously, he came to us when he was 28, 29. And he was a good right back for us as well. And let's not forget, you know, the right back at our right back, Lauren. You know, he was a right back when we won the double in 2002, and then also in the Invincibles as well. So he's going to get a massive, massive mention. But when you talk about Arsenal's right back, you can only talk about Lee Dixon. You know, he wasn't naturally gifted, you know, as a lot of right backs, you know, as a Cafu, you know, as a Trent Alexander-Arnold in terms of footballing ability. But as a right back, he had to contend with some, you know, like some really good players, you know, like players like Lee Sharp, you know, Ryan Giggs, and he held his own. And you know, to go on to the age of like 30, 38, still, you know, win the double in 2002, although not playing as much as he would like, obviously, but he still got a medal. Let's not forget him in 98. Let's not forget we were encouraged and we thought that that defence would get dismantled when Arsene Wenger came along. But, you know, Pat Rice's best advice is don't touch the defence. He was right. You know, he went on to be a better player. Even though I've got my issues as Arsene Wenger as a coach, I think in terms of his motivation, he got Lee Dixon playing football that I didn't think Lee would be capable of. So for me, it's got to be Lee Dixon.
All day, all day. Before we just come to you, Anthony, Guna ER says, Jez, what do you think about that dreadful Havertz? Oh, this is an interesting one. This is an interesting one. I'm going to throw this out. Anthony, I'm going to come to you on this one, mate. Kai Havertz, another Chelsea reject. How do you see it, mate? How do you see it panning out? Are we going to get him?
Well, personally, yes, no, not for me. I don't want him at the club. It's all what we said. We seem to be going for these Chelsea rejects, don't we? The players that play for Chelsea, they ain't playing no good. I mean, Havertz, we've all seen him play in the Premier League. I feel that the Premier League is a bit too strong for him. Nothing against the player. He may have been a good player, but I feel that he can't settle into the Premier League. I mean, his appearance in goal ratios and his assists, it's just shown that all in total. So I think if he was to leave Chelsea, I think he might be better off maybe going back abroad and rethinking his game, sort of thing. I think the Premier League is not for him.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Kenny, Kai Havertz, Chelsea.
Well, the thing I put on my Instagram stories that there's only one position he could play, and it's not the position that I think Arsenal signed him for. I look at Carver. He's a fan. He's got unbelievable natural ability, no doubt about that. And he's always going to be a hero to Chelsea fans because of the goals he scored in the Champions League final and won their second Champions League final. But if we're thinking of playing him as a striker, then no, you can't play him as a striker or a forward. The only position that he could play probably is the position that maybe a Smith Rowe kind of position, where you can play anywhere in the last third, or maybe somewhere where Martin Odegaard plays. But as a striker, no. If we're signing him, it has to be in those sort of positions, and we have to be 100% satisfied he's better than what we got in those positions. But as a striker, no way can he play forward, because I'm 100% against the kind of false number 9 theory. Yeah, it'll win you the league maybe once in a blue moon, but ultimately someone who can score 25 or 30 goals is going to guarantee you to win the league. Don't get me wrong, all 4 or 5 players getting about 15 goals a season, I'm up for that. But what Man City have shown, that to win the league and win all the pots of gold that they won this season, they bought a 36 goal striker in the league, and someone who went on to score, was it 52 goals? That was what gets you challenged and winning the league. So Havertz for me is a no-no. But if you talk about Havertz in the Smith Rowe position and maybe where Odegaard plays, then I am interested.
Yeah, right. We'll get back. I mean, personally, I'm not convinced. That's my view. I'm not convinced. I'm fed up with us basically buying in players from Chelsea. I just don't get this. I really don't. I don't think it's a good move at all. But it seems the way we be at the moment. We must have very good relations with Chelsea and Brighton. So this is the windows we shop in now. So it is what it is. Anthony, we talked about right back. Where are you going, man?
I'm going. Are you sure you can't see this? Because I got all my players written down on here, and it's a full house again. It's Mr. Lee Dixon, Dicko himself. I just feel that
It's
decent right back. Decent right back. He's played well. Let's not forget that phenomenal back four that he was playing in. They just knew each other's game. With him, Adams, Baldwin, Winterburn, absolutely brilliant. Offside, but I know we were classified as boring Arsenal years ago. But hey, listen, this is what we did. This is how we kept our clean sheets, because they knew each other's game. But if one was going here, the other one would sit back, and vice versa. It was such a brilliant and to have them for, and this is the reason why they played to the ages they played to. Because they just knew each other, and there was good defenders around about at that time. But it's knowing if you could have got the right defenders that can actually take over from their role, and read the game as well. But yeah, I think one time, if I remember correctly, I think he was our penalty taker at one time, Lee Dixon. If you remember correctly, I think he was almost up there in the top goal scoring in that particular season. He was our penalty taker. So, but yeah, he's a good player, decent right back. I liked it when he used to run down that wing and cross those balls in. That a decent from a right back. And also, I can remember one of the goals. I think it may have been either the last goal we scored or the goal before, was that phenomenal goal against Chelsea, literally outside the box, and he rifled it over the top left-hand corner of the net. That was unbelievable, that goal. And we brought that game 1-0. So, you know, yeah. So Dixon's got my vote for that one for the right backs.
Fair play. So, wow, I'm surprised at this at the moment, but we're going to move on. Jaminho's come up with the most amazing team. Ronison.
What, the worst Arsenal 11? The worst Arsenal 11 ever?
Yeah, I think it's got to be, isn't it? Ronison, Bellerin, Socrates, Louise, Mustafi, Kolasinac, Ceballos, El Neni, William Bentner, and Nketiah. Yeah, that'll win you a league. That'll win you a league, man. That's a class team. Right, let's move. I'm going to jump now to left back. I'm still struggling with this one. I am still, even right now as we talk, I could come up with 2 names right now. And I'm going to have to choose one. I have got Sammy Nelson and Kenny Sampson. That is a big ask. But I'm going to have to jump. And I'm going to go Kenny Sampson. I think that guy, his England career, awesome player for Arsenal Football Club. And I could have had, I could have had so many players in there. Seriously, Ashley Cole, to name but a few. But I'm going to go Kenny Sampson. I think he was an absolutely brilliant player for Arsenal. Kenny, who do you fancy there?
See that, I think if you were doing your team selections, all 3 of us, I think that's the one where it would give you sleepless nights, because if you think about left backs, world class left backs is synonymous with a great club. Go all the way back to McNabb in 1971. Then after McNabb, you've got Sammy Nelson.
Yeah.
And then after Sammy Nelson, you got obviously, Kenny Sampson. No one's talking about Nigel Winterburn. Then after Nigel Winterburn, you've got Savinio, albeit with a dodgy passport. And after that, it's Ashley Cole. And then I suppose, had the Mick Arteta not gone all inverted, Kieran Tierney might have been a candidate to push for that, potentially greatest Arsenal left backs of all time. But Mikel did a pet when inverted. So, but for me, it has to be Kenny Sampson, because he's the best left back I've ever seen. And I think he's the best defensive left back I've ever seen, because I think in an era where a lot of left backs can't defend to save their life, it's a close one between obviously Nigel Winton was a great defender. Wasn't as good as Ashley Cole in the sort of the last third. Kenny Sampson could go down that third if he wanted to, but he kind of occupied his own half, and he actually was an organizer of defence as well. And obviously Ashley Cole, that sort of partnership with Perez and Thierry, that left-hand side, especially during the great years of Wenger, when Wenger was a great manager at the time, is amazing. It gives me great pleasure to thinking about that. But for me, it's got to be Kenny Sampson, because at the end of the day, left backs are defenders first and foremost. And I've never seen anyone, give Kenny Sampson a run around. Only one player gave him a run around, and that was Franz Carr in '87. Apart from that, Kenny Sampson, long throwers expert as well. It's got to be Kenny Sampson for me. But I respect anyone who says Ashley Cole, because, the first thing you talk about Ashley Cole, look how he dealt with Cristiano Ronaldo when they played for England against Portugal. I get that, but me, it's got to be Kenny. Yeah. Kenny Sampson on that for me.
Am I right in saying this? I might be wrong. Somebody correct me. Is he still our most capped player for England?
I think he is, yes. He appeared 86 times. Obviously, a few of those caps were for Crystal Palace. Because I remember Ron Greenwood captain when he was at Crystal Palace. But majority of those caps were when he was at the Arsenal. And obviously, what ended his England career was his fallout with George Graham. But I think George Graham had Nigel Winterburn, so I think George Graham was trying to ease him out the side in a sort of sneaky kind of way. He's just waiting for him to say something, put a foot out of line, and then get him out of the club and get the player that he bought, Nigel Winterburn, in the team. I thought George was naughty that way. How he dealt with Kenny.
Yeah, George Graham could be a bit sly. Anthony, you're right back.
Left back.
Sorry, left back. Beg your
Left back.
pardon. Beg your pardon. I do apologise.
Yeah. It's same again. It's a clean sweep. Kenny Sampson. I got it here. Kenny Sam. I don't know if you can see it, the left back, but I don't want to show you the rest of them I got. And I messaged Jez, and this was the only one player Jez knew who I picked in my squad. I will tell you the truth on this one, was my left back.
You did?
And I did say to him, well, it was between Kenny Sampson and Nigel Winterburn, like what Kenny said, and I had to pick Kenny Sampson. The only reason being, I could vaguely, I can remember him playing it obviously at left back, and it's like what Kenny said. He was a good left back, and he always held his own. You know, he had, he did it for club and also country as well. You know, he's a phenomenal left back, and it's a shame that no one's, you can't get defenders like him now. You know, or like any of these players we've been naming. So, but as we know, football, it moves on and it goes into a different direction. We've just got to keep up with it. But yeah, phenomenal player. I rate him highly, and that's the reason why he's my left back, and I picked him over Nigel Winterburn.
Right. Well, fair play. Fair play. Right, Anthony, I'm going to stay with you. We're going to come into our two central defenders.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what position. Doesn't matter. Just pick one of your central defenders that you think is iconic in your view.
Well, from iconic, the word iconic, and from what I've seen when I first started watching Arsenal, the centre back that I pretty much grew up with was captain himself, Mr. David O'Leary. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. You know, he's got 720 odd appearances for Arsenal. I think he's in double figures for goals, if I think I'm correct. I think he scored around about 13, 14, maybe 15 goals. It's somewhere around about there anyway. But I mean, I feel he was a fantastic defender. And growing up and watching him, I think he left, if I'm not mistaken, I know he left Arsenal and went to Leeds, but I think that was going back to when the old Division 1 turned into the Premier League. I think that was when he left then. I think Kenny, I know, and even you, Jess. But yeah, and obviously we've seen what he was like for Leeds United at the back, you know, strong, solid like a rock. He was like that for Arsenal as well. So he's my first choice of centre back.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to jump in here. Yeah, I've got David O'Leary, absolute immense player in my view. Loved every time I watched that man step on the pitch and play. He was, I remember him in the 78-79 Cup final. In fact, that background, those legs there, are his. And incredible player. His professionalism was always 101%. So one of them for me is David O'Leary. Kenny Ken, any position, central, doesn't matter, left, right, your central defender.
So this is one that will get me tossing and turning, because I grew up with David O'Leary. You know, if you look at Arsenal, let's not forget in 1998 we had the 7 Irishmen. I bet anyone, 7 Irishmen, I can name all of them: Jennings, Rice, O'Leary, Brady, Devine, Nelson, Stapleton. That's 7. So I was able to name the 7 Irishmen at the club. Obviously, three of them play for the Northern Ireland, and the rest play for the Republic. But in terms of Arsenal centre halves, there's been some really good centre halves. Obviously, you can't not mention Steve Bold. He bought him from Stoke in 1988. I think we bought him the same time. We bought Dixon and Bold from Stoke. So they were good centre halves. On his centre half as well was Carlo Torre. You know, like I said, he's a humble guy. You know, just wanted to, learn off the best players. But I'm going to go a bit controversial because I think that after we won the double in 1998, we went into transition in that Man United were, like I said, when they bought Yapstam, they went ahead of us in terms of quality and dominance. 1999, we were very close to them. In 2000, 2001, they were levels above us, and we because we were in transition. I think that buying this defender turned us into a powerhouse in terms of winning the double in 2002 and an invincible. And obviously, he had his, as I say, he had a bit of his Dear John moments, but still playing in the Champions League final, scored in the Champions League final. For me, it's Sol Campbell, because I think I talk about impact and what impact he made, and how that signing turned us into the powerhouse after we went in transition. And I can only think of Sol Campbell as being like one of the best signings we've made, and the impact, because his impact on Arsenal was instantaneous. That season we signed Sol Campbell, we won the double, we won the league, let's face it, pretty comfortably, and we were comfortable in the FA Cup final as well. And Sol Campbell had a lot to do with that in terms of getting him on a free for Spurs. I don't want to annoy any Arsenal fans who think, well, what you getting an ex-Spurs player in there, or Spurs fans who watch this program as well and say, why are you rubbing it in? I'm not rubbing it in either way. I'm just talking about impact assessments and impacts on the squad. And Sol Campbell was a massive impact. So for me, I understand, both of you saying David O'Leary. I went to both his testimonials, one against Celtic in 86, and obviously the second testimonial as well. So, I grew up with David O'Leary, but for me, impact, it has to be Sol Campbell.
Great call. Great. I have to bow my head in shame. I never even put that out there. Great call, Kenny. Fair play to that one. Okay, our last centre back. I'm going to come out with this one. Player that I absolutely loved watching play. Leader, bully, professional, would kick you up in the air, grab you by the throat, bully you, do whatever to win a game. And we know who it is. Great, one of the greatest captains I've been ever privileged to watch at Arsenal Football Club. To me, I'm sorry, it's Tony Adams. I think he was an absolute icon of that football club. What he achieved at this club, and he still, to this day, purports the professionalism, and he's not one of these players that is sold out to the media. He sits there, he says it as it is, and I have more respect for that man every day, that he comes out and attacks the fakeness of the journalists that are out there, certain other people. We're not going to name things, but we know who we're talking about. And I think the man's a legend in my book. In my personal book, the man is a bloody legend. Kenny, who would you be your other central defender?
Well, you said it all about Tony Adams. Tony Adams as well. He's one of the players, right, who came through a lot of adversity at the club in terms of, you think about Euro 88, Bobby Robson played him alongside them. I think he played in the centre half. I think he played alongside Mark Wright, because I think Terry Butcher got injured. And, England lost all 3 games in 1988, Euro 98, and he came back to enormous abuse. What happened the season afterwards? He won the league. He won the league, at Anfield. It was him driving the players on. In 91, he went into prison for a misdemeanor during the World Cup, where he missed out because Bobby Robson thought Mark Wright was better on the ball than him. Spends about 2 months in prison, comes back, leads the team to winning the league title. And then when we he won the cups, multiple cups for under George Graham. Obviously, our captain when we won our last European trophy, and then he reinvented himself in terms of like, in what I mean by reinventing himself is that he came back from, like I said, alcohol abuse, and then went on to be part of Arsene Wenger's new era. Arsene Wenger, got him to play more football, got him to go further up, score goals. For me, it's Tony Adams. Everyone talks about Frank McClintock, and rightly so, but Tony Adams he's the man. And just to touch on something as well, it gets me down where I look at big Arsenal games, and I look at Arsenal in the media, and I don't understand why Tony Adams isn't utilised more in the media when it comes to representing Arsenal. I've got nothing against Martin Keown, but it seems to me that the club have had a say in trying to, block Tony Adams from being using the club in a more greater capacity and represent the club when it comes to punditry. Because I know the club has a lot of say on who represents the club when it comes to being a pundit on Arsenal games, and also being used to give their opinions on Arsenal. I'm not talking just fans, but I'm talking about ex-players, because it seems that the players who talk the club up always get asked to be a pundit on the BTs, the Skies, the BBC Ones, or just represent the club generally. But Tony Adams doesn't seem to be used. He wasn't utilised when Arsene Wenger was clearly in trouble. No. So for me, it seems like the club play lip service to Tony Adams, but when it comes to actually engaging with him and getting him to work with our great club, they seem very reluctant to do that. And then we know why. It's because he says it how it is.
Facts. Well, that's a very, very, very good point, Kenny, because that is why certain people like us get hatred from the narrative, because we actually say it as it is. And there's a lot of people out there that don't like the fact that we go against the narrative because we don't accept the mediocrity. But Anthony, give me your central defender.
We just talked about him, Jimmy Adams. I mean, fantastic captain. Let's look at how old he was, like what Kenny said, how old he was when he first started playing for Arsenal in his Arsenal career, and what went on in his private life. He's put that behind him, and he's produced excellent work on the pitch. That's why he's a captain. He's the sort of captain now that I think Arsenal needs now. In today's football, I think everybody needs a Tony Adams. I mean, let's be honest. This is a guy that's actually blood on the shirt of Arsenal, blood on the shirt of England. This is a fantastic captain, player, centre back. Jumps up, wins balls in the air. Timely tackles are done well. Passing, how to motivate a team. I mean, look when we used to sign these younger players. At Arsenal, and you'd be watching him. You'd be there. You'd be like, yeah, get here, get there. You eye on the ball, just keep going. This is things that you see with Tony Adams. You don't see that anymore. I mean, he talks a good game. He played a good game, and like you said, I thought he was fantastic. You can put him up there with the likes of David O'Leary. In my opinion. You can. It's that them two were absolutely phenomenal. They were a partnership at one time, weren't they? So he's he learned a bit off of David O'Leary as well. But I feel he was a brilliant captain for Arsenal and England. You can't fault the guy. So yeah, Tony Adams for me. Yes.
That's I think just about anybody will agree with that. Great comment from the Assemble. Adams represents Arsenal from the Highbury days. The Cronkies don't want the new generation to realise what Arsenal was. They want them to accept what they are doing now. Kenny, do you want to answer that one, mate?
100%. Just 100%. Tony Adams, doesn't give false praise. He's got that kind of old mentality where he says, you know what? Yeah, we've won. Let's do it again. The same sort of mentality that Roy Keane has with Man United when he just accretes Man United. Yet Man United are all right with Roy Keane. They haven't got a problem with Roy Keane, representing them when on Sky or on ITV when they play in the FA Cup. But for some reason, Tony Adams doesn't get utilised. I don't understand that. It's clear as the night is day that the club, is had too many transitions for our liking since we last won the league in 2004. We haven't won it for that long that we actually use that as a barometer and think, oh, we're still celebrating it. He's a guy who will shake things up. Don't get him wrong. He hasn't had the coaching career that everyone wants. He went to Portsmouth, didn't work out, and obviously he's managed in Eastern Europe. I think he's managed in Spain. I understand that, but to not have someone like that across the club, maybe in some sort of direct. Why isn't he involved with coaching the youngsters? Why isn't he involved in some sort of directorate level at the football club?
Yeah,
and I'm glad they're trying to get David Leary, although there's other people reticent to that. But Tony Adams not being used by Arsenal Football Club in some sort of capacity. Either the club have offered him a job and he's turned it down, or someone hasn't made an offer. If they've turned down, if Tony Adams has turned it down, then I apologise to the club. But if they haven't made an offer and they're reluctant to use him in some capacity, then obviously I've got issues with that, because I'm not just saying because he's a great player, but name me someone who doesn't know the club inside out. It's the same why I have issues with their attitude towards George Graham. I mean, Pat Jennings, if you go to Spurs, Pat Jennings has got a suite named after him. He's still a matchday host at Spurs. He isn't a matchday host for Arsenal, yet George Graham can't get a look at Arsenal. I regard George Graham as the best coach we've ever had. Still.
Well, we're going to come on to that. We're going to come on to that right at the end, because I'm going to say, guys in the chat, come up with, after you've listened to all our predictions of our 11, our first 11 for Arsenal, think of the most iconic manager, Arsenal ex current, whatever manager that would manage these teams. That'd be an interesting one for sure. Right, we're going to get into midfield, and this is going to be an old one. I thought I spent about 3 hours last night going through midfield players that I've witnessed played, sorry, not played, but watched play. And I'm going to start on the right with an inside right player. Joined Arsenal in 1961, played for Arsenal up to 74-75. An absolute iconic footballer, in my view, and this is just my view, is a player called George Armstrong. An incredible footballer. His work rate on that right wing was immense. He won his first European trophy for Arsenal in the Fairs Cup. He won the double. Lost in the FA Cup in 72 against Leeds, but an incredible footballer. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there who are watching this who've probably never heard of this fella, but he was an iconic footballer. He was a nightmare. There was a player at the time in the 70s called Derek Dugan, who played for Wolverhampton Wanderers, and a player called Jeff Astle, who was an ankle breaker, played for West Bromwich Albion. And these two were real tough nuts. And they said one of the worst players they ever had to play against was George Armstrong. So for me, he's in my starting 11. Didn't score, shed loads of goals. He did score, but he was just a workhorse. His work rate was something second to none. Kenny,
we grew up in Islington, basically hearing stories about Geordie Armstrong. Obviously, we didn't call him Geordie for any other reason that he's a Geordie, but we talk about his iconic status at club. He was before David O'Leary broke his appearance record. It was Geordie Armstrong used to hold that position as our greatest ever appearance maker. So George Armstrong, goes back a long way. I can understand why you put him in, because he's a double winner. And let's not forget, he actually played when we won the Fairs Cup as well in 1969-70. So he was instrumental in us winning our first European trophy. So for me, I do understand George Armstrong. But when I look at that players down the right hand side, you think about Rocky, really. And the reason why I look at David Rocastle is that he didn't make as many appearances as Geordie Armstrong. Probably didn't make as much of an impact long term as Geordie Armstrong. But you think about, when I talk about the impacts, I look at David Rocastle. I think about the 18-year-old who made his debut at Newcastle when Don Howe actually gave his debut. Everyone thinks it's George Graham and Don Howe. And I think about his first full season, where he made a massive impact. And we're not even just talking about the goal against Spurs, but down that right-hand side, the skill, his ability, the speed as well. He was really, really, really consistent during those periods. And even in 1989, he was very consistent with us. Obviously, after that season, there were injuries in the knees. In 1991, he didn't play as much as we'd like. And then he got sold by Georgie Graham on medical advice. Obviously, and after he left us, his career, and I say it respectfully, went nowhere. He struggled to displace Gordon Strachan at Leeds, and obviously there was, he was at Ipswich, Man City for a while, and Chelsea. He was playing their reserve team. He couldn't even get in the team under firstly Leonard or Ruud Gullit. There was a story of when they were living in Berkshire, him living next door to Mark Hateley, and on a Saturday they were like talking over the fence because both of them couldn't get games for Rocastle for Chelsea and Mark Hateley for Queen's Park Rangers. So, but for me, I have to put Rocky there. Not out of disrespect for Geordie Armstrong, because I've seen videos of him, but I could feel it because I watched Rocastle in the flesh, not just on TV, but in the flesh. I could, I'm teetering towards David Rocastle, not for sentimental reasons because he's no longer with us. It's just purely on footballing ability. There's no sentiment with me. It's your footballing ability that comes before anything else.
Facts. I mean, Rocky Rocastle, man, absolute legend footballer to me. Privileged to see him play as you were, Kenny. Anthony, your right wing, inside right, whatever you want to call it, whoever. Who's your man?
My right winger. Well, I tell you what. Kenny was just talking about him, and that was Rocky, David Rocastle. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. When I watched him from on the telly, I thought he was fantastic. He had pace. He was skillful. He knew how to run at players, and get the ball into the box as well. He was just a joy to watch. David Rocastle, and it's like what Kenny said. Obviously he got sold. George Graham obviously sold him. Obviously through that injury in his career, it's sort of like plummeted down, sort of thing. And it was a shame really because he left us. I think he went to Leeds United, didn't he? And it was just it was sad to see. And obviously, as the story within itself. As a person, like you've got that person on the pitch, but when he was off the pitch as well, and I've seen ex-footballers, Ian Wright and whoever, talking about him as well, and they described him what he was like as a person off the pitch, and obviously by the time he was a lovely guy, when it fly, and obviously in the end, what happened, was sad. So but that's the not that it was not just that, but it was the main reason I picked him was because I can remember when he first come on, and he was a joy to watch, and I still say that from this day on, David Castle. So yeah, that's why he's on my right side.
Yeah, I'll go with that. I mean, I just went with Georgie Armstrong because I was privileged to see him play. Many occasions, I just thought he was an iconic player. I had to think long and hard about it. Absolutely. We're going to move to, as Warren says, I remember Geordie Armstrong, absolutely superb player, loved him. Yeah, I mean, his work rate was incredible, incredible player, and was with the club for a hell of 1961-62. He joined the year I was born, and I was privileged to see him play. So fair play to him. We'll move over now. Kenny, we'll move over to the left. Not necessarily a left player, but it doesn't matter. Who would you put out there in your midfield on the left?
You know what? It's sacrilege that if we're going with 4-4-2, for some reason I can't include Liam Brady in that team, and I want to include Liam Brady. But when I look at that position, to include Liam Brady, I've got to leave out three iconic, I consider iconic players, and I can't do that. And that hurts me to leave Liam Brady out. If you went 4-3-3, I could get him in, but at 4-4-2, it's going to be hard to get Liam Brady in my team. The reason why, when I look at that position, you think about that position, honourable mentions. You've got to think about Brian Marwood for that season when he left Sheffield Wednesday when we won the championship, by on goal scoring against Liverpool. For most of that season, Brian Marwood was brilliant for us. Then obviously you've got Anders Limpar.
Yeah,
he won the league in 1991. He was absolutely superb for us for a couple of years. And then Adam Limit, you've got honorary mentions. Obviously, you talk about Ljungberg, Mark Overmars won the double in 98, 99. How can you not think about Mark Overmars? But you know what? For me, when you talk about iconic players, and everyone talks about the three best players we've ever seen at the club, and it's always three people. One I've just left out, and the other two you might mention as mentioned later. But this guy deserves to be in that bracket. Robert Pires.
absolutely.
Robert Pires was one of the best players I've ever seen in the flesh. That season, before he'd done his knee, he'd done his cruciate against Newcastle in the FA Cup quarter-final. That season, he was playing football that was absolutely superb. It was absolutely superb. He won the Football Writers Player of the Year, and rightly so. And I remember when we got the league championship, because we won the FA Cup the week before. I remember the Arsenal players just bowing down to Robert Pires when he was on his crutches that time when we lifted the title at Highbury. And for me, unbelievable. The goal against Liverpool at Anfield in the 03-04 season. I mean, what about the goal against Aston Villa when he actually took the mickey out of the defender and just lobbed the defender? So for me, it's close for a lot of players. I'm heartbroken I can't get Liam Brady in, but if you're going 4-4-2, I have to put Robert Pires ahead of Brady, because Robert Pires, that was his position, and let's not forget his axis on the left hand side with Ashley Cole and Thierry Henry. It just brings a smile to my face. So yeah, it's got to be Robert Pires.
Yeah,
but sorry, Warren. I know you're angry with me because I didn't get Liam Brady. I know a lot of the old boys as well. I get it, but if we're playing 4-4-2, how am I going to get Brady in? If you've got 4-3-3, he's in the team, isn't it? Yeah. Sorry, guys.
Well, this is mate. Kenny, I sat for a good hour last night. Seriously, this is probably 11 o'clock last night, and I'm going through certain players because I was just getting so dumbfounded. And oh dear, I've gone for a 4-3-3 personally. So I have jumped in for Liam Brady, and I'll tell you for why. I was privileged to watch him score his iconic goal at down the lane, the swerve. Like, never seen a ball hit like that in my life. Incredible. I could have gone with Perez. I could have gone with Overmars, but I think the problem, I think maybe I'm going this way is because as a young man at the time, he just impressed me so much. And the name he had, Chippy, I just thought, and I remember him in the 78-79 Cup final, incredible player. It's a tough one, it is, but I'm going to stick, I've stuck with it. I'm going to go with it. People in the chat saying Perez, blah, blah, and that's fair play. But I'm going with him. I'm going with him. Anthony, who you going with, mate? Doesn't matter what lineup you got. You can have a 4-4-2, 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, whatever. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, on the left, I was like, well, it was between two people, which Kenny said that one, Robert Perez, and the other one I had also as well was Anders Limpar on the left hand side, and I slightly went off of even though I wanted Perez, but I went a bit old school on this one and went for Anders Limpar. On the left, obviously, you know, he was like a £1 million buy or something like that from George Graham when he brought him in. I thought that on his debut, he had a fantastic debut when he come on. You know, I thought he was absolutely brilliant. The way to describe him on that wing was he had back then for playing for the Arsenal was he had so much passion, but more flair about him. I thought he was more flair than passion, but you could still see a bit of passion that was there. And the play and the skill that he had on the left hand side of midfield in crossing those balls in. I think he scored. I think in one. I can't remember if this was on his in his third season or in his second season. I think he scored about 13, 14 goals that season. But yeah, I thought he was absolutely brilliant. Nobody really heard of him, did they? When you know, he was a guy that played international for Sweden. You know, nobody really heard of him when he come out when George Graham signed him. But yeah, I think he was a good signing. You know, I think he was one of George Graham's. I think you got to put him in the top 5 signings of George Graham's signings when he was there. You know, you can't put the likes of not being funny. You can't put the likes of his last sort of signing was Chris Kawamia and that when we finished 12, you know, and John Hartson, I believe it was 2 strikers we signed. And but yeah,
you've got Glenn Helder.
Yeah, do you know what? I was going to say to one of you, I'm surprised you didn't pick Glenn Elder. Do you know what? He scored 1 goal, and that was against Middlesbrough. And I can remember on one game, he had the ball, and he was down the wing. He did it perfectly, and he shot, and he literally he spilled the shot over to the other side, and he hit the corner flag. I can remember that.
Oh.
And he was absolutely dire, Glenn Elder. But I do get people on this one. You see, and when we do this and we for the left hand side, and I always think, "What you don't pick Glenn Elder?" But can he beat me to it?
Yeah, well, mate, I don't know what you're getting on about. I think he's absolute class, personally. But, okay, let's get back into the midfield. I honestly think this is going to be quite easy. I'm going to go centre midfield left. I could pop quite a few players in there, but I've got to go. I mean, crikey, I very nearly could have gone with a couple of players from the 70s in there. but I can't do it. I've got to go with Paddy Vieira, captain, awesome player. I couldn't. I tried. I honestly, guys, I tried to sway myself to other players. I really did, but I had to go. Excuse me. I had to go with Patrick Vieira. Kenny Ken, where are you going?
Absolutely. Patrick Vieira is one of the best players I've ever seen in an Arsenal shirt in terms of midfield. People just he. I think the best compliment you can pay Patrick Vieira is only one compliment you can play him, and it's a very surprising compliment as well. It's easy to talk about the two doubles. It's easy to talk about the Invincibles. It's easy to talk about the penalty that won us the FA Cup in his last kick for the ball. But the biggest impact, the biggest, like I said, thing to say about Patrick Vieira is how at a loss we were when he left. You think about our midfield after we lost Patrick Vieira. Look at the season afterwards, how we got bullied in midfield without him. That's how much of an impact Patrick Vieira had at this football club. The 2005-2006 season, teams like Blackburn, Newcastle, Bolton, Birmingham even, West Brom were kicking us off the park in midfield because we no longer had Patrick Vieira in leadership, muscle, putting his foot in the tackle to protect our midfield. We became easy to play against, easy to beat. And that's why I was going to look at Patrick Vieira. But what people don't realise, he's very skillful as well. And he had an engine in him as well. Very, very quick, in and out of possession. And he was massive. I remember one time, it was quite actually hilarious. It was a game against Liverpool. Do you remember that game against Liverpool where we beat them 2-0? Yet I think 3 players got sent off. One of them was Vieira. Another one was McAllister. And I think it was Vieira. McAllister got sent off for I think a dirty tackle on Parlo, I think, or Perez. And then Vieira got sent off. And I think another one of the players, because I think it was one of ours. I think it was Laura got sent off as well. It was in the 2001 season. We won 2-0 that season. And when we were coming out the ground, you know when the players do with their warm down? Well, I was coming out after talking about the game with friends. A couple of friends of us were there. And this big lad ran past us to go on the pitch to do his warm down. It was no other than Patrick Vieira. And oh my God, he's massive. Not only is he tall, he was like that. And I thought, you built like that and you could play like that silky and that smooth. For me, Patrick Vieira.
All day, man. Anthony.
Yeah, clean sweep. Patrick Vieira. I mean, what can you say about the man that has been said? I mean, everybody goes on about centre midfielders, like your defensive midfielders. You know, obviously going back years ago, you could think of it like you've got the Paul Ince, the David Basses, and the list is ended. Roy Keane, and and obviously you got to put Patrick Vieira up there with the likes of them all. So I got to be honest with you, I love the Patrick Vieira and the Roy Keane Man United versus Arsenal. Now this was when football was football for me. It was that season when you go, oh, who's going to win the league this season? It was either Man United or Arsenal. That was the only 2 teams that was within the Premier League in those seasons. And unfortunately, that they've gone. But we will get them back, hopefully, touch wood. But yeah, I mean, the fighting and the battle he had with the Roy Keane, in that middle of the pitch, winding up Roy Keane and Roy Keane saying to him in the tunnel, see you out on the pitch. And I think that day, we lost to Man United, if I'm not mistaken. But Patrick Vieira got the better of Roy Keane in that game, despite if Man United won on that game. But overall round, tackling and getting up in your face and God knows what else, Roy Keane met his match that day with Patrick Vieira. I don't care what anybody says. I watched that game and I still say it from this day. And I thought the rivalry between them two was fantastic. Even between the two clubs, that was the only game that stood out in those seasons, in that decade, was Arsenal versus Man United, Vieira versus Keane. You can't beat it.
Fact, yeah, I totally agree with you there. So we're going to come into the last midfield position. Not going to put any pressure on here. Number 10 shirt, obviously, tricky one. Tricky. Well, not really. Probably one of the greatest players I've ever been privileged. This is my pick. Probably one of the greatest players I've ever been privileged to watch at Arsenal in my lifetime, Dennis Bergkamp.
Oh.
That guy was an absolute bloody wizard. Some of the goals he scored, his wizardry, dribbling skills, flicks, turnovers, God knows, incredible footballer. Yeah, Dennis Bergkamp for me. Kenny?
About it is that when I think about midfield combinations, I think about, I was going to say Manu Petit alongside Vieira because of those 2 seasons, not the season where we won the double, but obviously the 98-99 where we probably should have done the double the season afterwards. But we played against a very, very good, great Man United side who we push all the way. Then I thought about it. If we're playing like a bit of flair and we only need one powerhouse in midfield, then I thought that maybe I could get Liam Brady in. I could get Liam Brady in there. So I apologise for the confusion and a bit of skullduggery and messing everyone around. Liam Brady is playing I can get fit Liam Brady in because I would prefer because I already know my 2 forwards anyway. And
yeah.
But don't rest assured, I haven't left out the great man Dennis Bergkamp. But I don't want him in my midfield. But I can understand why people put Dennis Bergkamp in midfield because I know they probably want to include another player in there up front. But I can't fit that player in, I'm afraid. So for me, it's got to be Liam Brady. I was brought up on Liam Brady in terms of the goal against Spurs. Look at that. Let's not forget, he actually made the tackle and won the ball back from a tackle before he scored that particular goal. And then the 1979 Cup final was probably his best game in an Arsenal shirt. It was complete and utter wizardry, where to this day, if you watched it live, how everyone talks about it as a great game. It wasn't a great game. We murdered Man United. And I was 7 when I watched it, but I remember Man United only coming into it in the last 5 minutes. But he ran the show. And I think in 1979, 1980, he was definitely our best player. And the only sad thing about that season is that we were tired. We had those 4 cup semi-final replay games against Liverpool. Plus, we had a long campaign in Europe. Brian Talk played 70 games that season. And he collapsed it in the season. It was tiredness that got us. Not taking anything away from West Ham in one with a Trevor Brooking fluky goal, but I am West Ham. But yeah, Liam Brady for me goes in that midfield because I was going to go Manu Petit, but I thought, you know what? Let me just take the straight racket off and have a bit of flair in my midfield. So, Liam, you made it.
You squeezed him in there, Kenny.
Just a bat.
Yeah, I mean, I loved Liam Brady, man. Absolute class player. And Anthony, your midfielder, number 10.
Number 10.
Doesn't have to be a number 10, but
no. This one will be number 10 because with my formation, I went 4-3-1-2. So we got that one player behind the 2 strikers basically, and it's the man what you said, yes, Dennis Bergkamp. I thought he was his better days was in behind the if you played two forwards, he was better off behind. Uh, this guy, what can I say about this guy that I haven't already said about him? I'm going to say if which we all know, if Thierry Henry is king, then Bergkamp's got to be a god. It is as simple as that. So I think the guy, when the ball was passed to him, magic happened. I mean, I can remember when we first signed him for 7.5 million, and Bruce Rioch was the manager at the time. It was him and David Platt coming, two players. But and I think we finished fifth that season in the league, and then he was sacked and Wenger took over the following season. But yeah, I think Dennis Bergkamp, the football he played under Arsene Wenger was incredible. That was one of the best footballs I seen him play. I mean, he was good. He was good from years ago, but then he went to Spain just before us. We bought him off. Italy. He went to Inter Milan, didn't we? We bought him off of Inter, and his football went downhill when he went over to Italy, and then came back up in the Premier League. But yeah, I feel that the quality is there. This guy, I could put him up with Paul Gascoigne having a decent footballing brain. He knew his next move and his next move after that. Dennis Bergkamp, a bit like Gaza, and I feel he's fantastic. But even though he scored goals and he was a creator for goals as well, he provided them as well, the system, but he got other players more involved. That was where he was. That was the reason why he was in the middle. And obviously, you had attacking opportunities from him, maybe the striker or the two strikers that he was behind, and also the wingers coming forward as well, coming into the box. So he supplied everybody within around that 18-yard box. And I thought he's fantastic. They don't make players like that anymore, in my opinion. So yeah, Dennis Bergkamp, inside forward, number 10. That's the reason why he's in my team.
Yeah, I have to say. I mean, I remember watching down at Southampton, and he just destroyed them. Absolute destroyed Southampton. But we move on. Okay,
Yeah.
Let's get to our strikers now. This I had to think about. Obviously, there's one player. Yeah, it's a given. It's a given for me. The other one, I had to think seriously hard about. My all-time striker for Arsenal. I'd love to have the ability to put in a few names, but unfortunately, this is all about players that we've witnessed and seen. So obviously that'd be bullshit. Me to put in names of players I've never actually seen. So fair play. Of course, my number one is going to be Thierry Henry, one of the greatest strikers I've ever seen in Premier League football. An incredible talent. When he first joined Arsenal, I mean, he wasn't brilliant. Let's get it right. But by God, did he come into something to be a bloody whirlwind? I mean, some of the stuff and goals he scored were just out of this world. So, Kenny, one of my
see,
is Thierry.
I think the first time me and you met, it was actually, God bless his soul, it was the last sort of podcast we did with Claude. 3 days later, Claude was taken away from us. But the last debate, and it's something that I always hold dearly, it was me, you, Lee, Chig, and obviously Claude. We had the best ever Arsenal players. We had actually a debate between two players, Henry and Bergkamp.
Yeah.
And I personally think Henry's our greatest ever player. But one of the things is I couldn't dismantle or dispel any argument you had for Dennis Bergkamp, because everything you said about Dennis Bergkamp being our greatest ever player, I agreed with. And it's not diplomatic when I say, if anyone says Henry, I agree with them. If anyone says Bergkamp, I agree with them. I understand it, because they're probably the two of the best players I've ever seen in an Arsenal shirt. People talk about Liam Brady, But these guys won things for us.
Yeah.
Won the major trophies on a regular basis for us. And Thierry, when I talk about the Vav of Vum, I'm with you. When he first came, he couldn't hit a barn door from a yard out. He forgot how to play a striker. I mean, but there was one game when Arsene Wenger stopped messing around and said, "Right, you're my striker." Derby. It was a Sunday against Derby. We won 2-1, and Henry scored both the goals. From that game onwards, I remember it was around October and November night 2000. He became our main man up front. You could talk about the goal against Tottenham in 2002, free season. You could talk about the 4 goals against Leeds in the Invincible season, or you could talk about hat-trick on Good Friday in 2004. You could talk about the goal against Real Madrid in 2006 in the Champions League run. The guy, when they say what is the French for Vavavoum, I just look at Vavavoum.
Mm-hmm.
He not only is he a record goal scorer, but he changed the way forwards play. He actually killed the idea of a centre forward. He actually killed centre forwards' careers because he wasn't just a centre forward. He could play left, he could play right, he can drop into midfield. He didn't score tap-ins, but if he wanted to, he couldn't header to save his life. But I'm sure if he actually took his heading seriously, he'd be the best at that. But the way he scored goals in a way that belies what a centre forward is. Cutting from the left, cutting from the right, take on 4 or 5 players like they're not there. The goal against against Man City, where against David James, or the goal against Man United where he deceived Roy Carroll. I'm running out of superlatives for this guy. For me, on a personal level, I think he's the best player we ever had.
Yeah. Yeah, incredible player. I mean, I won't lie. When we signed him, I thought, who's this fella? Didn't know anything about him. Of course, that was before the days of social media. But Anthony, your striker, one of your...
I'm going to go slightly different on this one, but just bear with me because you've both brought them up. I'm going to bring somebody else up now. My other striker that I'm going to bring up is Ian Wright. I thought he was a brilliant striker. The passion he had playing, he had so much passion. He hated losing. He hated losing and people getting the better of him on the pitch, which wasn't a lot, but that was it. But I can remember being there and it was against Bolton when he broke Cliff Basson's record. And he had the shirt on of 179, and he scored. I think he scored his second goal, and he took his shirt off and he started waving it. But when he done that, he thought he broke the record. He didn't on that one. He basically equaled the record. I don't know if you can remember that. And he obviously popped up and scored another goal again, which obviously broke his record. But yeah, it was. I think the fans were giving him said, "No, you've equaled it." He just got carried away. But yeah, I thought he was a brilliant player. A decent buy from Crystal Palace. I think it was 2 million quid, if I'm not mistaken. And but yeah, he's it's a shame really because he had regarding his international caps, he only had, I think it was only something like 33 caps for England, something like that, maybe. Yeah. And he was top goal scorer in the Premier League with the likes of there was him, Alan Shearer, Teddy Sheringham. There was so he was always in the top 4 goal scorers, basically, Ian Wright. And a mate of mine was a Tottenham fan, and we always had this debate who was better out of Ian Wright and Teddy Sheringham, but you can understand who I went with, Ian Wright, and he went Teddy Sheringham. So, that was it. We used to wind each other up all the time, rip piss at one another. But yeah, they were good times. But yeah, I just wanted to bring Ian Wright in because obviously we were talking about Thierry Henry, which probably know who my next person may be.
Fair play. No, I respect that. My second striker, I thought long and hard about this one, but what swayed me was that this player got golden boot, 2 years on the bounce. He won us, or contributed to winning us the Division 1 at Anfield, 89. A great player, poacher in the box. And this may well be controversial, people, in the fact that I haven't gone for Ian Wright. The reason I haven't gone for Ian Wright was I used to love him as a player, but in the last year, 18 months, the crap he's come out with, nah, he's not for me. So it's not Ian Wright. So I'm going for Alan Smudger Smith, iconic footballer, won trophies with Arsenal, as Ian Wright did, fair play. But to me, any player that comes out and has played for the Arsenal shirt and has the audacity to disrespect the club, tell Arsenal fans what we should do, how we should think, what we should say. No, sorry, Ian Wright. Not for me, fella. I've been watching this club before you were born, sunshine. So you don't tell me what I say or what I think. So you didn't win it. It's Alan Smudger Smith for me. His cheeky little goal at Anfield 89 under the most intense pressure. I don't know how any player plays under that pressure, but he did it. The game was won and Mickey Thomas scored. And you get it, man. You get it for me, Kenny.
Yeah, the thing about it is that, you know, like one of the reasons why I can't get Ian Wright in my team is because because at the end of the day, there's no way I was leaving that Robert Pires at my side. And obviously, because I've left that Manu Petit and I put Brady in, can't get Wright in. Sorry, I can't do it. You know, don't get me wrong, I've got nothing but respect for what he did for the football club and respect for how he started his career, because he got rejected by everyone because he came from the wrong side of the tracks. You know, how he didn't make it at Brighton is a mystery to me. But, you know, for Steve Coppell to go up to Ron Nose and said, I think I've found someone who could play for England who hasn't played professional football at the age of 21. Respect to what he's done in his career. And, you know, he scored 9 goals for England. You know, should have probably gone in the Euro 92 squad, you know, instead of Alan Shearer, because Alan Shearer was untried by that time. You know, so he should have gone in that squad. But, you know, and he was a great striker for us. We never won a league with him. And I think the reason why we never won a league with him because we played entirely to his strengths. So we became a cup side with Ian Wright. So I can't get him in. Smudger Smith, when we played with wingers, we're a better side and won leagues. And I can understand people getting Smudger Smith in, because Smudger Smith won 2, you know, golden boots in an era where Ian Rush and Johnny Aldridge. Remember, Johnny Aldridge was scoring goals to that great Liverpool side. Ian Rush came back from Juventus. And in 91, Ian Rush was still going strong for Liverpool. But he won the 2 golden boots, which helped us win the league. So I get it. But for me, if you think about Dennis Burke, his best position, it's got to be Dennis Bergkamp. People seem to talk about Dennis Bergkamp as an all-round footballer. And I get it. And he's got the vision. You know, he's like he plays as though he's in the stands and he can see the pass. Because obviously, when we're in the stadium, we can see the pass before the player. But he knew where a player was going to run. He put it where he wanted you to be. Never made a bad pass. Iconic goals. The hat-trick against Leicester. The goal against Newcastle. Those goals home and away against Barnsley. The goal against Sunderland in the FA Cup replay in 97. I mean, the goal against Spurs. in '97. I mean, the guy won the league, virtually won the league on his own in '97, '98, the first double.
Mm.
And let's not forget, he was pivotal when we did the second double. Again, like Thierry Henry, couldn't hit a barn door from 5 yards and didn't really score. But his first 2 goals were special, the 2 goals in Southampton. So for me, it's got to be Dennis Bergkamp. And let's not forget, when people say, well, why are you putting him as a striker? Let's not forget his goal scoring, the goals he scored for Holland. Remember, he played in a more advanced position for Holland.
You did,
In a kind of a split striker role. And he was their top goal scorer for a long, long time. I think Clivert broke the records. And let's not forget that before he went to Internazionale, he was scoring the kind of goal ratio that Van Basten was scoring before Van Basten went to AC Milan. So in that respect, Dennis Bergkamp was always a great, great, great footballer, but he could play up front as well. Let's not forget he scored quite a few goals for us as well. So that's why if I want my team to be balanced and win, Dennis Bergkamp gets ahead of Ian Wright, because with all due respect, how are Ian Wright and Thierry Henry going to be playing the same team? It just doesn't happen in real life.
That's a great comment, actually. I hadn't thought about that. No. Anthony, your second man up front, and then we'll come into our manager. Your Kenny, your manager, Anthony, your manager, my manager, that would have managed these teams that we've created, which are actually quite similar, let's be fair. Not a massive amount of differences, but your striker, mate, your second striker.
Well, my second striker is no doubt is the king himself, Thierry Henry. I mean, what a buy! I mean, 10 million from Juventus. You know, he played well from Monaco, went to Juventus, and it's funny. It's a bit like Dennis Bergkamp with Ajax when he went to Inter and over in Italy, and then Henry followed the same footsteps at Juventus, and they didn't really they couldn't get on there. You know, whatever the reason was, I don't know. But you know, Wenger brought him in. I think it's around about 10.5 million. But what people didn't realise is when Wenger started him, he started him out on the left. And instead, not he went straight up front. He was literally out on the left wing. And you know, obviously he was playing well there. He scored a considerable amount of goals. And Wenger said, "Look, if you can score goals from there, you can score them up front." As far as I'm concerned, and then he put him up front, and as we know, the rest is history. I mean, fantastic player. I know he was a bit greedy within his runs, but he had a right to be because he was Thierry Henry. You know, if 9 times out of 10 when he ran and he ran with that ball, did not pass it to one single player. As soon as he got in that box, he was getting a goal. He was scoring goals, and he was scoring goals for fun. It's just a pity that when you've got a player up front of that caliber, after a while we weren't winning the league. We were finishing top 4. We were finishing third, fourth again, and you're thinking, why the hell can't we win the league? When Thierry Henry was in the side. Along the same season was when we sold him and Patrick Vieira in the same season, wasn't it? They both went, and Barcelona, and I think Vieira went to Juventus. I think it was. I think that was a sad time for Arsenal fans, knowing that that was one half the spine of our team being removed, and it really was, and we can say, has it been right since? Personally, in my opinion, in my views, I don't think it has been. We haven't really replaced these top quality players, like a player like Vieira or a Thierry Henry. We haven't replaced them at all. So it was sad times when they left, but listen, I'm glad that he played, both of them played for Arsenal, and they give us their all, and it was a joy to watch them, and being invincibles as well not losing a game, one game in the entire season. So, you know, I feel that they've been brilliant for us, and you know, thank you very much for coming and play for Arsenal, really, and giving us exciting times. I think now, if I'm not mistaken, I think is Henry gone? I feel he's got a new job now, and is he gone as assistant manager somewhere?
I'm not sure it's confirmed yet. There's talk, but I don't think it's been confirmed.
Right, okay.
But okay, man. I'm just going to go through the chat. Danny, mate, thank you as always for your super sticker. And Alex says I have a lot ahead of Adi Boyar, Kevin Campbell, Merson, Giroud. Yeah, okay, fair play. Danny says Bergkamp, Henry, and Vieira. Fair play on that one. I saw somebody putting about Van Persie. Yeah, I mean, he had one great season.
Yeah,
one great season, but you know, one great season doesn't make you a king. Let's have a big up for the Arsenal legend John Jensen. Yeah, class. And Longhead, he 187. Good up to see you, mate. We're looking at Carlos Borges. Interesting. No idea who that is, my friend, but there you go. Andrea Shavin, 4 goals versus Liverpool.
his debut.
Yeah, I remember. I was actually listening to that on the radio when I was in the Dominican Republic. I remember that. But we're going to have a quick roundup and come and give me in a minute, Anthony. I'll give you a couple of seconds. Have a think about the manager that you would manage, your manager that would manage your 11 that you've named tonight, because I've got mine. I'm sure Kenny's got his, and that'd be quite interesting. Chat, put in there, who would you have managed the teams, your teams that you've come up with, or our teams we've come up with? So, Anthony, go for it, man. Go for it.
But the manager of this team, and I pick it obviously because we all know this is what we've seen and what we've grown up with and watching and that. The manager I've gone with is George Graham.
I knew you could say that. I knew.
The reason being was because I believe in the years that he was he managed. You know, I think, how many years was he at our club for? I think it was it under a decade? It was under a decade, wasn't it? It was under 10 years, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was 8 years, I think he was there. And if I'm not mistaken, I mean, for 8 seasons, he was manager. To win 6 trophies in 8 years, to me, that's quite phenomenal. You know, this is when Arsenal was Arsenal, and believe it or not, as us now as Arsenal fans, I think we'll bloody love that now, wouldn't we? If we can get six trophies every 8 years, you know, it'd be fantastic. But yeah, he's the reason why I've gone for him. I felt sorry for him. I don't know what happened in that season of 94-95. That was the year Blackburn won the league, and we finished 12th. And we signed, obviously, our first player we signed in that season was Stefan Schwarz, if anybody can remember him, from Sweden, the Swedish player.
Yeah.
Yeah, we signed him in, you know, and obviously later on it was Chris Kawomi and John Hartson. So it was a bit of a poor season that was. And then, as we know, he got sacked and Stuart Houston took over on a temporary basis. But yeah, but apart from that, he's my manager.
Fair play. Kenny Ken, who would be your manager to manage your?
Thing about it is you got to mention Bertie Mee won the double. You got to mention Arsene Wenger because he's won 2 doubles and he's been invincible, but he never won in Europe. Bertie Mee won in Europe, so I was thinking, you know, he got in the final in against Barcelona. He got cheated out of the final, in my opinion. And obviously, there was a no-show against Galatasaray in the UEFA Cup final in Copenhagen. You know, at least it was one of the worst games I've seen when we had a stellar team, but we just couldn't be asked. But for me, like I said, Anthony mentioned it. 6 trophies in 8 or 9 years when he was a manager. George Graham, tactically, is our best ever manager we ever had. I can put it to a lot of the panel here and also to the people in the chat. If George Graham was our manager during those times when we were regularly competing in the Champions League, George Graham at his best, we would have won at least one of those, the Champions League in one of those years, and not once or twice. I guarantee it. Tactically, George Graham had the wood and Arsene Wenger in terms of like the best ever Arsenal manager, and that's why I was going to go George Graham. It's not personal, it's Wenger. Yes, I've got issues with Wenger because I think he destroyed the club and left a mess which was unforgivable. But on managerial ability, he's up there because he's won a lot of trophies. He's a great motivator. But is he a great coach, great tactician? Hell no. It's George all day for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got written down here George Graham. No question. I thought he was an iconic Arsenal manager. What he achieved with what he had. Incredible player. Manager, I beg your pardon. And he was an incredible player. Very privileged to have watched that man play. I had great difficulty in my defensive options of not including him. I won't lie. But fair play to him. He'd be my man. He would be my man. And we have to say, was he our best manager in Europe? Tricky one. But he was certainly brilliant. He was certainly bloody brilliant in the league. And
I can understand why you picked Smudgy, Jess, because I can remember his goal against Parma in the final of the Cup Winners' Cup. So, he won it for us. I think regarding Europe, I think he is the best man. I think did we win it twice? Cup Winners? I think we have won it twice under George Graham. Did we win the Cup Winners' Cup twice or once?
He won it twice.
We won it once. Yeah, once. I think he got sacked. He got sacked before we got he got sacked. I think before we got the quarterfinals of the Cup Winners' Cup, and then Stuart Houston led us to the final win. Was it final? It was in Paris again, isn't it? In Paris, to Parc des Princes.
I think.
It was Copenhagen.
That was the final.
By the way, yeah. Zaragoza beat Chelsea in the semi-final. So if Chelsea beat Zaragoza, it would have been an Arsenal-Chelsea final in 1995, the Cup Winners' Cup.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Right, we're going to wrap it up, people. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. We've given you our 3 interpretations of our Arsenal 11. It's been quite interesting. A lot of agreements and some different options in there, which I think has been quite interesting. Kenny Ken, thank you, mate, for coming on as always.
I'm enjoying myself.
What are you doing?
Well, I'm at Kenny Ken 1972 on Instagram. I put out a lot of content on there. Can't stand Twitter. I've got probably about 5 times more followers on Twitter, but I just don't go on there. Twitter is just a cesspit of cancel culture and stifling of free rule and people free will of people having an opinion. You have to agree with everyone on Twitter, or you get cancelled. So they can have their Twitter and all the followers can stick it. I'd rather be on Instagram where there's more interaction and more goodwill.
Fact, I'm not on Twitter. Flatter, what you want to bleed and call it. Anthony, mate, thanks for coming on. I believe you are on a YouTube channel. Is that right? Am I?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. First of all, I just want to get across with Kenny when he says he prefers Instagram. I'm with him on that. I watch Kenny's videos, all of them on Instagram as well. I always like them, Ken. by the way. And but yeah, I have a YouTube channel. Check this out. He's a mate of mine. He's a Man United fan. It's called Football United TV. But I host a show on there. It's called Gunners from All Corners. And basically, this is Friday nights at 9 o'clock. We haven't streamed in a while, but I think we're trying to get some shows leading up to now from the start of the season. And but yeah, we just bring in Arsenal. It's Arsenal fans, Arsenal content. You know, we've had a few on that's been on your show, Jez. That's come on my show. I'll definitely try and get you and Kenny on there, not a problem. And but yeah, just a good show, good debates, and you know, it can get a bit leery, but you know, but it's all good.
That's what it's about. And the good news is, I put in the group chat today that YouTube Partner Program have now reduced their membership to only 500 subs and 3,000 watch hours to make it easier, they're saying, for small YouTubers to actually get on the platform, earn a little bit of money, which is great. I think that's brilliant. Because I think actually before it was way too hard, and a lot of people, I believe, I think, gave up because it was just ridiculous. But good up for him. I'm going to do the outro. I've got a new outro from the great man, Connor, top fella. We'll do the outro, then we're out of here. Kenny, Anthony, everybody in the chat, thanks for coming on. I've loved this show because it's been a good conversation about our different opinions on the great players that we've witnessed and watched and experienced, and the enjoyment they've given us over the years. So let's go for that, and we'll hang on, we'll call it a night, people. Take care, everyone.